Alright, I'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon and welcome. I am Jenna Fitch, the 2026 President of Ames Home Builders Association. I wanted to take a moment to first thank First National Bank for hosting and sponsoring our event today. We appreciate their ongoing support for the Ames Home Builders Association. Some new members, I would like to introduce our Barb and Brad Vincent with Vincent Construction. Now on to our speaker. I am pleased to introduce Dan Culhane, the President and CEO of Ames Regional Economic Alliance. Thanks for being here.
All right, Jenna, thanks so much. Appreciate it. I just told Jenna a moment ago, I said, clearly you didn't pre-announce the speaker because none of you would be here if you knew it was me. I get here once a year and I'm always impressed by the number of people that show up. Especially some of my board members like Chuck and Rich over here and Kevin Burke up in the front, and I'm probably missing somebody. But a lot of him, Dylan's up here, Dylan and I work together. I'm going to talk about a lot of the things that I talk about if you look at our board of directors. But I would tell you that we're grateful for the partnership with the Ames Home Builders Association, and there's nothing more important than to economic development than housing. And I know you all know that. Hopefully that's why you're in the business. But you know, when we think about the issues that impact our state and our communities at the most granular level, it's people, it's housing, and it's childcare. And in many ways, the state has really worked hard to support more slots for childcare. If you look at our market, the Ames region, excluding the Des Moines Metro, we've had incredible job creation over the last 15 to 20 years. At one time, we were averaging a little over 1,000 jobs per year. You may say, where are those people going, Dan? But they're here. They're around the region. But consequently, what's happened is that we've never had enough housing to support those people. And I think the Des Moines Metro is a fine place to be. I get down there plenty. But selfishly, for the job that I have here in Ames, in the Ames region, I would love everybody to live at least a little closer to Ames. Story County, now we're in Boone County, now we're up in Hamilton, over in Greene to the west. And so selfishly, I think my board would like to see more of those people live here. And so that's why we appreciate the work all of you do, the way you're charging forward. And I'm going to talk a little bit about housing today, but I feel a little ignorant talking about housing when the experts are in the room and I'm looking at all of them right now. So I'm going to kick it off. I'll give you just a very quick sample of kind of what we saw in the last year. And then I'd love for a conversation about what you're seeing, how you're feeling about 26, and some things like that, because I'm constantly listening to our constituents about, and you are my constituents, about what we can be doing to be more supportive to your efforts. So let's get rolling. We've changed a lot in the last probably 10 years. At one time, there would have been about a third of the logos that sit here today. The newest one is down on the bottom, second from the far left, the Greene County Development Corporation. And I would tell you that a year ago, I would have told you that we had no intention of growing the organization or expanding our borders. And what I've found over the years, and I've been doing this a long time, is that it works really, really well if someone calls you, but if the Ames organization calls one of our outlying communities or counties and says, hey, we know what's good for you, we'd love to do your economic development work. It doesn't work that way. And so consequently, as we took the phone call from Greene County, and I had conversations with those folks over the years, but nothing overly serious. It came together quickly. They put a contract together, and now Greg Picklap leads that organization over in the Jefferson and the Greene County community. And we're already seeing some things that we can do. And I guess that's the important thing. If you wonder why we continue to expand our borders, I'll tell you in just a moment. The biggest reason is that 30 years ago, when I ran an organization in North Iowa by myself, I had a board of directors, but I was the only staff person. 30 years ago, one person could probably do it. But today the dynamics have changed so much in terms of social media, the whole lot of running an organization, managing an organization, supporting marketing, workforce, business retention and expansion, all those things that we do, I think pretty well. We're able to do that because we've expanded our revenue, just like you in your own business. As your revenue grows, you can add more people, you can do more things. And that's what's happened for us. And so consequently, these organizations, Greene County was a one-person organization. A few years ago, Boone County was a one-person organization. Hamilton County had nothing at the time that they approached us. One person can't do it any longer. And so this way, we can go ahead and work a project in any of the communities we work in, and there's a bench of 20 people, 19 people that can support that thing in a variety of ways. And so some of these folks don't ever touch an economic development project, but a lot of these people do. Some of these people don't touch a community development project or a grant application for a downtown planters in Jefferson, I'm making that up. Things like that. But we've got the infrastructure and the people to support those things in a wide variety of ways. And so that's why we've grown. That's why these people have called us and said, hey, maybe we need to hook our wagon to the Alliance. And so far, it's working. A few highlights from 25, and I'll be really brief on this because 25 is over. I mentioned Greene County. We kicked off the Live, Work, Play campaign, and that campaign is really focused on if you live here, if you choose to live here, or if you're thinking about moving here, look at the offerings that exist in the market and in the region for things for people to do. And so I won't go into that, but you can log on to liveworkplay.com, or is it playnames.com, and it covers the region, the 4-county region that we serve as it relates to farmers markets and a wide variety of events around the region. We launched a podcast in 2025, and Eric Smith leads that for us. And if you want to be on a podcast, raise your hand and I'll make sure you get on the podcast with Eric. That's taken off really well. Our listenership's been really positive. Had no idea what to expect with that program, but it's been really, really good. And then on the bottom right, I can hardly speak at any event anymore where I don't at least mention the Daisy Project in Boone, which continues to get larger and is certainly a bright spot in our region as they broke ground in May of last year. A few summaries on the overall numbers that we track. We track external funding. So if your business got a grant from the state and we helped you, if we didn't help you, we're not going to track it. I refuse to take credit for things we didn't do. But that almost $36 million in external funding came from a wide variety of places. USDA grants and some of our smaller communities that we worked on, grants and programs for UEA that went into the former Sports Iowa facility over in rural Ames and Boone County, things like that. That's where those dollars come from. We also track capital investment as it relates, again, to the projects we work on. And we have just I like to round up, so I'll say right around $700 million in capital investment last year. Naturally, a lot of that is attributed to Daisy, but I'll tell you that Daisy project's only going to continue to climb as it relates to the capital investment. Business retention and expansion. As fun as the Daisy projects are, it's the people that are already here that we have to pay the most attention to, because those are the folks that are most likely to create jobs in your community, right? And so we better be taking care of those folks. We did 86 business retention visits last year. That was about 65 short of what I wanted to do. We should be doing between 150 and 200 existing industry visits annually now in the 4-county region, and I'm hoping we hit that this year. Job creation at one time was the biggest thing that economic development organizations talked about. It's still important, folks, you all know that, because that's the only way our market grows. But there's less emphasis on job creation at the state level now as it relates to financial incentives. They just launched a new project called BIG, Don't tell me ask me what that stands for, but BIG is the new Economic Development Incentive Program for the Iowa Economic Development Authority. And what that's really intended to do going forward is focus on capital investment in the state and innovation. Jobs also matter, but not to the same degree they did 10 or 20 years ago. And so, as we take a project to the state, we still need some job creation attached to it. Dylan's working on a number of those right now. They still need job creation attached to them, right? But it's not the primary focus that it used to be, in part because it's harder to find people, right? And so they're trying to incent innovation, automation in some places, and things like that. That's the focus of the program going forward. I'll take a breath. There's any questions on what I've said? Any comments? I had a professor in speech at Iowa State who said, Dan, silence means affirmation, so you guys must be really buying this stuff. Housing. We're really proud of the workforce housing tax credits that we've helped a lot of our developers and home builders amass over the last several years. I think this last year was the first year we've had one in Ames, probably in 5 or 7 years, and at that time that project didn't go forward. But the workforce housing tax credit program is a really, really, really good tool. In fact, we advocate strongly. If you've got a project that's going to go through the queue this year, you have to tell us, because I will work feverishly to get you funded, because those things are so valuable to making a project even better, right? I know, and the pro formas you work on have to make sense, right? A lot of times, those workforce housing tax credits can be the difference between going forward or not doing the project. And so please keep workforce housing tax credits in mind. We push a lot of things out in advance of that, so people are aware of it. We talked to all of our private developers that we're aware of about those programs, because they're very valuable. So we had 8 funded. We had 8 out of 12. Does that sound right? 8 out of 12 funded this last year for 317 units, but $4.4 million in funding. The largest grant is usually about $1 million, but it can be less. I believe the cap is $1 million. You'll see some housing statistics there on the right side. I wish we had the source there, because I don't know where those came from, but correct me if I'm wrong if they don't look appropriate to you. On the bottom left is the Anthem project down in Huxley, and on the right is Prairie Place over in Boone, a Hunziker project, and then the one on the left is Chris Gardner's project down there that's come out of the ground nicely. Of course, we do an annual report like organizations like us should. You can check that out online. We don't print it because we print too many and it costs too much money, I guess. But it turned out really well. We had a really good 2025. And every year I say, I hope that the next year will be as good as the year before. I'd say the same thing again today. Briefly on Daisy, you can see an aerial of the site there. When that project first came to us, it was around $650 to $700 million in capital investment. I forget exactly how big the building was. It would be maybe 700,000 square feet. Today that building is closer to 1.5 million square feet, so it's almost double, or it is double. And the capital investment, the last we heard, was 1.2 billion, but going up. And so, great project, certainly for Boone proper, but it's a great project for our region, but also for our state, because we're going to see a dairy industry pop up in a big way because of this facility. And the job creation that they projected when we first met them 3 years ago hasn't really changed. They're going to hire about 250 people, 255. But the nice thing about what Daisy does is they move a lot of people to the new plant for a couple of years, because their culture is so important to them. They want existing Daisy employees to bring the new people along to be just long-term, to retain them, to be better employees long-term. So great project that we're excited about, and you'll certainly see some things coming out of the ground likely this spring.
Hey, Dan,
Yes?
we need to get you fixed on the mic because you dropped out.
Oh,
So we're not sure if it's a battery on your pack or if
Okay.
it's something else.
do I need to start over? Talk amongst yourselves. No pressure, Tim. You hear me now? Genius. All right. Back in my pocket. Okay. Let's keep rolling here. Any questions while I'm getting dressed again? Moving on, Prairie View Industrial Center. You know, I always try to be candid with audiences. That 310 acres you see there and a couple of the parcels on the south side here, those have been tied up for quite some time by a project. Regrettably, that project, we're pretty sure went away on Monday of this week, so we're hoping the week ends better than it started. What I would tell you is that in spite of that project going away, this is a fabulous site. 310 acres, rail served, just a stone's throw from Interstate 35 and US 30. And so, while we had the short funeral on Monday about that deal, I'm still bullish on this corridor because this infrastructure, it's ready to go. And so while we're all disappointed, I've got an executive board member in the back, John. I didn't see John. John's in the back. He's going, "What project went away?" Because we talk about these things every month, right? I'll tell you later. But the point is that this is really, really good infrastructure for our market and our community. You might recall, Alliant Energy owns all the property that's highlighted in the gray. And so they control the dirt, which is actually a good thing because it controls the price. Alliant's looking to get their money back when it comes to a sale on this. And so as we work with a company, and we had a project down in Huxley that we didn't have property tied up, it ended up working out great. But what happened was when you knock on someone's door, if I knocked on your door and said, "Hey, Keith, I think I've got somebody who wants to buy your property." "Well, Dan, what's it for?" "Well, it's for a big manufacturer." "Oh, well, I think the price just went up," right? I mean, that would be a natural inclination, right? And so that's why having property under control, if you're developers in this room, you understand that too. It's important. And so while you might say, "Well, nothing's happened out there, Dan. Just the only thing that's out there is Whiffles." Well, I would agree with you, but a lot of this property's been tied up for quite some time. And so again, remember, we had a short funeral, we moved on, and it's going to be okay because it's still a terrific site. Dylan, you want any color on this?
The Alliant has purchased additional land that's not shown on that to get more contiguous acres on the south side. And
So Alliance bought this, they bought this, and they bought this, right? All right, so they've got great control of significant acreage that will ultimately support economic development here in Ames, which is really good. So I'm going to talk a little bit about housing. And for most of you, you're going to say, "Well, Dan, we already know all these things," but I wanted to touch on it because I want to underscore how important this is to the Alliance, to my board of directors, to our team at 304 Main. This is so critically important for our growth of Ames proper, but also the Ames region. And so if there's anything that's disputable on these bullets here, we took it from the City of Ames staff report. Not trying to throw the city under the bus, but if anything's wrong, and I don't mind taking blame if we earned it, but we're just walk through this. The thing I'm going to show you though that's really cool, and I can't, in the time that I've been here since 2006, a long time. I don't know that we've ever had a pledge, and right now this is a pledge, right? Because a lot of things have to happen, of this many new potential units in Ames. If my math is correct, and I'm a Minnesota public school kid, so bear with me a little bit. It's around just under 1,300 units between multifamily and single family on these projects. So Hayden's Preserve, which has had a number of names over the year, was Rose Prairie for a long time. That's coming together, and I have to applaud the City of Ames on what they're trying to do here with the tax increment financing and some of the things they're looking to do to provide some of that pioneer infrastructure that I've talked to a number of you about over the years that we could never get the city to break free. Anybody here from the city? Is fire chief here? Okay. They're not giving a kidney for this, all right? They're not. But they wouldn't have to do this. And so I want to give them credit for that because this is really a new day for the City of Ames when it comes to housing. So Hayden's Preserve, and again, I would tell you, I don't know when these things are going to pop. Some of you may have more color on that going forward or even today, but it's encouraging for us as we talk to prospects, whether it's in the research park or it's in Prairie View or it's someplace else. We've got a couple projects popping in Story City right now. We can talk about the housing infrastructure that's being deployed in the Ames marketplace, which is so positive. So you've got Hayden's Preserve, Auburn Trail. I think most of you probably know where these things are. So, but Auburn Trail is another. It could be upwards of 200 units. That's significant. We haven't had. I'll look at Rich or Chuck. Have we had 200 units built in Ames in 1 year in the last 10 years?
Since 2008.
Okay, so it's been a while. 2008 was the last time we had at least that many units built in 1 year. I'm not suggesting Auburn Trail is going to build all those in 1 year, but the point is, we've got projections now or estimates of what can happen with the infrastructure that will be deployed. And it's really important and significant. Greenbrier, which is south of the Country Club on George Washington Carver, a very large parcel of property. Again, that could increase, where'd we go? 250 single family units and 200 multifamily. You think about the impact of that on our marketplace, you know. We've got close to 300 units in Boone right now through a variety of developers. Boone has been 12,000 people since 1900. And we kind of joke with their leadership over there, and we say, you know, whether you like it or not, we think you're finally gonna grow. Because you've got 300 housing units combined between multifamily and some single family that is finally going to pop in your community. And that shouldn't be a big deal, but it's a really big deal. And all of us in this room, I think we're all on the same team when it comes to some of these things. These things are a really big deal too. Damani and Ainsley, two other developments that are critically important to our market, and we're grateful for the investment you folks are making on this. And there's a lot of dirt moving in North Ames right now. Is that sewer being deployed? Anybody know? We're gonna go with it. There's sewer being deployed up there, and it's really good for. Is that right?
I'm not sure what part you were talking about. Oh, on
East of Damani.
oh, yes, that's the Friedrichs development, the Bluffs.
Very good, thank you. And some other things, this is clip art, the downtown link and the event center. That's something that's certainly being pushed forward right now in a variety of ways. But you will see something there at some point, I promise you that, for a wide variety of reasons. But that will be transformational, not only for downtown, which it'll be very catalytic for downtown, it'll also be a tremendous asset and reach for the region, as well as the Sci-Town development, which you clearly see McFarland Clinic under construction right now, and there's talk about other things being announced here at some point soon, too. At the end of the day, all these things are important, right? As we try to attract more jobs to this market, and hopefully you're trying to build more things in our market, those things go together. But then at the same time, we need more investment downtown. We need more investment at Sci-Town in and around Jack Trice Stadium. And so we really believe as an organization, these things work together so extremely well. And you know, at the end of the day, as much as I want people to live here, the Des Moines Metro is thriving too. And that's really good for the market that we serve here as well. And so I can talk a little bit about 26. You know, I told you we missed out on a project that we've been working on for a long time. That's happened before, and we've always lived to tell about it. And you know, it's one thing when we screw up. You know, that's hard for me to swallow. If we screw up, but when there's forces outside our control that take a project somewhere else. We were a finalist for a Jack Link's beef jerky plant 5 years ago. That was going to be the greatest thing in the world. I could see Jack Link's at Jack Trice Stadium, buying all this advertising for Cycle Athletics. It was going to be amazing. Candidly, the jobs would have been just okay. And they went to Georgia instead. And that was disappointing for a week or two. But we moved on from that. And then Whiffles landed on that same site. And Whiffles, nothing wrong with Jack Links, they make great stuff, but we ended up with a better project. And so that's where I always feel like there's another day to swing the bat. And so consequently, this 300 acres that I was pointing out to you a little while ago, that is going to bring something absolutely tremendous to our market that hopefully will create really meaningful employment opportunities that buy your houses and rent your apartments and things like that. I'll stop there for a moment. I think I'm out of slides, but if most of you know me, I can talk all day. So let's have a conversation if you got things in your mind.
Dan, back to the job creation point that you made. Is the focus from the state due to the lack of workforce that we have in the area? And so that they're changing their focus?
Yeah, it is. You know, the workforce situation isn't as dire, some of you might disagree with me on this, as dire in the Ames region of the Des Moines Metro. But you get into parts of rural Iowa, there's some really good jobs, Allison, that nobody wants to take because either there's nowhere to live or it's nowhere they want to live. You know, Daisy did a driving tour of the Midwest, and they determined places where they could put a plant. And they determined this market because they said university town, highly vibrant, sitting on top of the Des Moines Metro, also very vibrant, lots of choices for places to live. And then they had a site that fit really well for raw materials, milk, in northeastern South Dakota. But it's pretty desolate wherever they were looking. They didn't tell us exactly where, but they said we knew that none of our people would want to live there. And so, as again, I said, they're going to bring about 10% of the workforce. They're going to relocate people from other Daisy plants. They want them to come, and they want them to want to be wherever they're putting that plant. And so that's the challenge, I think, for the state right now, is that they want to incent a large manufacturer that may sit in a very rural part of the state, but they're concerned about if they have to pledge jobs, they won't meet that obligation. But if they're incenting innovation and artificial intelligence and robotics and things like that, those things cost a lot of money too. And so the state says, well, we can help support that in lieu of all the job creation that we might have wanted 10 or 20 years ago. So it really does make sense. You know, the biggest challenge I see in our region is we've got some communities that still have a shot. We've got some really, really small spots in the road that we've picked up in the last few years where I go, I don't know how we help them. And I don't like saying that, but it's just the reality. There's just certain things that probably won't happen in some of those places. Oftentimes it can be based on infrastructure. They don't have the sewer water capacity that Ames might have, or Boone might have, or Nevada, or Story City. But it's also just about the sheer infrastructure of the school district. You know, if you bought a home in one of those communities, your child may go 20 miles each way to go to school. So there's lots of factors. And as I've talked to a lot of the candidates that are running for different things, they talk about that too in pretty unvarnished terms. You know, we probably don't save everybody, meaning everybody being communities, right? And so that's where, as we look at how we deploy our services around the region, we're really trying to focus with that local leadership on how can we best help you accomplish what you want to accomplish. You know, if you're a community in rural Story in Boone County, or even the Hamilton or Greene, you've still got a pretty good shot, right? Because there's enough people that scatter across the region that live in these communities that are trying to support their hometowns or their towns and invest back in those communities. It's as you get further and further out, away from those commercial centers, the Cedar Rapids, Iowa City area, Dubuque, Ames, Des Moines, places like that. There's enough job creation and enough activity to keep a lot of those communities thriving far outside that urban center. Ames is technically an urban center. I sometimes question that term, but that's what they call it. These 5-day work weeks are killers, aren't they? I don't want to let you go yet. I feel like I let Stacy down by only talking for 25 minutes. the legislature's back in session. Stacy and I were talking about that before we got started today, and there are some things in a bill that came out of the governor's office yesterday that are concerning. The governor is a good friend of the Alliance, and she's been a good friend to economic development. So let me preface it that way. But a property tax bill that came out of her office yesterday would really restrict tax increment financing. In tax increment financing, I've been around long enough that 30 years ago, the only way you could use tax increment financing was if you wanted to build a road. The developer said, hey, we're gonna put this subdivision in. We'd like to build a road. Okay, we can use TIF for that. Well, we might need some sewer and water. Well, we can use TIF for that. Well, since that time, you can use TIF for just about anything you want. It can be just a sweetener or a kicker, if you will, on a project. Hey, we're gonna throw 50% of the TIF in for 5 years or 10 years into your project to make the pro forma look better that you're trying to take to your board of directors. It's a lot different today. It's actually a really good tool, and frankly, folks, it's the only tool. There's projects, whether it's in the research park or it's in Boone, or it's in Story City, where tax increment financing is a valuable tool because it's flexible. Again, things come out all the time during the legislature, and you go, that's probably not gonna pass. This probably won't get any legs, right? But the point is that the fact that people are even talking about it, especially when Ames is finally using it, right? For housing. That's the last thing I wanna do is have one shot on this and then it goes away. And so please be vigilant about the legislation that impacts you. Because as I think about that piece of legislation, I feel like that impacts all of you in this room. It certainly impacts what we do at our office related to economic development projects and things of that nature. But that's a piece of legislation that would be very hurtful to trying to grow our communities, no matter how big or how small they are. So keep that in mind. Anybody familiar with a job training program called 260E or 260F? Yeah, okay, a few of you are. So that's a training program that was developed in the early 80s during the farm crisis by Governor Branstad. And it's a diversion of the withholding you all pay on your people when you pay them. There's a portion that goes to state withholding, right? Well, at that time and until current day, you can divert a portion of that into a training fund based upon jobs you're going to create or you promise to create over a period of time. Well, now there's talk. Right now, it's not really in the legislature, but it's come out of the administration's office. I think it's time to do away with that. Well, I can tell you that on the DAISY project, and again, it's because it's so large, I think that training award was close to $1 million. It's real money. And the way that works is you have to do the training, and then you pull the money out of the fund to reimburse yourself. In some instances, and I've been around long enough, I've worked with international companies that said, hey, we're gonna build this plant in Mason City, where I used to be 1 million years ago, but we gotta send a bunch of people that we hire from North Iowa over to Germany to understand how to run this new machine we're gonna buy. Those costs were largely funded by job training. And so, if you hear about that, I'd ask you to be an advocate for it, because it'll continue to matter. It really will. It's not, in a project like DAISY, it's $1.2 to $1.5 billion, but it's still $1 million, And so, and we've got another project that Dylan was working this week. I think it was $100,000, wasn't it, $125,000? But still, that's still money that can be applied to offset a cost in their business. And I think all of you as business people, if there was a grant or some kind of program, and you said, hey, that'll knock $500 off my costs, you'd probably take it, right? And so it's things like that that I know we're more competitive from a tax standpoint in our state, but we have to continue to have these tools in place to support economic development opportunities. It's kind of like saying, we're pacifists, we're putting our arms down, and Nebraska says, we're not gonna do that, and Missouri says that, and all of our surrounding states say, that's BS, we're still armed, right? Why would we totally disarm ourselves from being empowered to support economic development? And so we've got plenty of work to do going forward as it relates to the legislature. Luke?
Hey Dan, with the leadership changes at Iowa State, do you anticipate any economic adjustments, whether it's through enrollment, focus on the research part, with the new administration?
Everybody hear that? New president at Iowa State, new leadership. Will there be changes or a stronger push on things? I've met with the president a couple times, and I knew him before he got the job. So I'm not holding anything back. We really haven't talked about that. But I gotta believe that there'll be a stronger push on enrollment. Enrollment's still pretty good here. I was down in Manhattan, Kansas back in September or October. Their enrollment, they used to be like Iowa State, right? They were both 24 to 25,000 students. Iowa State grew. I figured K-State was about the same. K-State's under 17,000 students right now. And you don't think of them as being that small, but that's pretty insignificant compared to where they were. My guess, and this is a guess, Luke, is that I think President Cook will focus on enrollment going forward. I think Dr. Winterstein was a tremendous president for the time she was here, for the things she had to deal with. I think David's got a new day, and just as a new administration. I think you'll see more push on economic development. And let me really slowly preface this. Steve Leith was a bulldog, right? If you remember Steve, and he loved economic development. My sense is David Cook will be a calmer, milder version of Steve Leith as it relates to economic development. And I say that with utmost respect to President Leith. I hear from him every now and then still. But I do believe that there'll be more focus on Research Park, research in general, a whole host of things. How do we continue to augment that rich opportunity, that rich asset that sits south of Highway 30? There's so much good going on out there. How do we continue to invest in that and put good fuel in that thing's tank so it continues to be an engine for economic growth? First and foremost, as we know, for Iowa State, right? And I'm good with that. But secondly, who's the direct beneficiary? We are as a community. And so I do think you'll see a push on enrollment, you'll see a push on economic development. And the one thing I think Dr. Cook is really mindful of, he's really engaged on campus. Now, he's been in a smaller university, but I don't know if that matters. I know he's highly engaged on campus with faculty, the student population. I see lots of things on social media. They seem to love him. If you paid any attention to Dr. Winterstein, she's like an icon on campus with the students. She couldn't go to a basketball game without kids crowding around her or wanting their picture with her, and that says a lot about her leadership style. And I think David's a lot like that too. But I do think that David's going to be drinking a fire hose for a long time. He's coming in the middle of the legislative session, which is not a great time to come here, especially with the things that the region and universities are going to be under attack this session. We've already heard about this week. There was a bill that dropped that, this is not a knock on the community colleges because they're great partners across the state. But there's a bill that would allow for 4-year degrees to come out of the community college network. Well, if you're Iowa State or the University of Iowa or the University of Northern Iowa, that's a problem, right? Because we all want those universities to have good enrollment and strong enrollment. And now if we give the community colleges an opportunity to offer 4-year degrees, it's just more competition. And competition isn't always bad, but that could be bad for our region universities. I'll tell you this though, that bill that came out, the community colleges are not in favor of it. So keep that in mind too going forward. I don't know that that'll get any legs, but it takes up oxygen, right? It's like a lot of the bills that come out every year that says, we're gonna take tenure away from faculty at the region universities. That'll never get passed. But every time that gets out there, it's easy for the University of Nebraska to say, hey, I know you're down to Ames and Iowa State and University of Nebraska. We're not taking with tenure over here. You can come here and get tenure right away. But you never know what's going to happen over at Iowa State or at the University of Iowa, because they keep talking about that every year in the legislature. And so it's this conjecture that comes out that spooks people. At times it spooks investors in the state. And so that's where we need pragmatic people to just say, we're not doing that, okay? And so that's where the legislative session is going to be critically important. David's coming in at a precarious time, but he really, everything I've heard from business leaders in the Fargo region, he really handles the legislature well. And I think he'll know what to do. And he's been a very good president up there. And so I'm excited about him coming back to Ames. I asked him one day, I said, what's it like coming back to your hometown though to be the president of the largest employer? He says, yeah, it's a little weird, and I'm sure it is. But I think he'll be a great leader, much like Wendy was, much like Steve was. President Greg Joffrey, those are the presidents that I've been around, and they've all been highly successful in their own way. I'm assured David will be as well. Great question. Jamie?
Dan, back to the link, is there a construction timeline on that yet that you're aware of?
I can't speak to that, but Chuck might be able to. Any comment on that, Chuck? So here it is.
I think the advent of adding the event center has slowed us a little bit as we finalize the size, and we're working on the final massing for the entire project. So we had a number of meetings this week. I would like to think that by the end of February, that will be done, and we'll be having what we believe will be a final project that we will be unveiling to all of the community. So the best case scenario, though, there's still likely to be 6 months worth of engineering, utilities, that kind of stuff. Our goal would be into the ground by the time the snow flies next fall.
So what excites me about the link in particular is that there'll be a few hundred housing units and hotel rooms downtown. Think about the pressure that puts on downtown in a good way. What new services will you see downtown? Because there's a market now that says, I need this, I need that, right? And it could be a drugstore, as an example. But I think about the addition of additional restaurants, services for entertainment, bars, things like that. As an example, would Noir have closed if the link was done? I'd say probably not. You know, because I think of the we've all gone to those conferences, or we all get away and we stay somewhere where you want something to do after your business is done, right? What do? Okay, what does Dan do? Dan goes to Noir, right? Instead of that's what you do, that's what I do. But the point is that, you know, people are looking for those things when they visit. And if you've got that many visitors coming to downtown Ames, or just to the market, you know, how do we, and how more specifically, if we've got a hotel downtown, and we've got people whose homes are now downtown, they're just gonna draw on services that maybe don't exist today. The other thing that I've seen for years, and you've all seen this too, is that how do we get people that stay in the hotels out by the interstate to engage in the community? You know, maybe they do. My sense is they don't. And there's got to be a bigger draw, and I believe that once the link is complete, once SciTown is complete, there's a whole host of reasons to stick around a little longer. You know, how many people come to a football game on a football Saturday and they drive back to somewhere in Iowa where they live, because the football game is the high point, and my hope is that when these things are done that we're talking about, they say, well, why don't we at least stay one night or come in the night before, because there's really cool shit to do downtown or someplace else in Ames, right? And so that's the hope, that's the goal in my mind, is these things will actually catalyze a longer visitor experience. I'm speaking Kevin's language right now, but it's true. That's what we're looking for. We want people to stay longer, right? And oftentimes people relocate or move to a community that they've visited before. And I can't think of a better community to live in than Ames, but it'll be even stronger with the things that we're talking about today. And another 1,293 housing units, right? That's the whole goal. That's why we get up every morning, Dylan and I do, and do what we do. We're trying to continue to augment a really great place into something even better. But the only way that works is if you folks all show up for average B-level speakers here like me, you show up and support your home builders organization, you support things like the Alliance and other things throughout our community, Discover Ames. You support those things because we're all pushing in the same direction. And I would tell you, by and large, we really are. And so I think, generally speaking, this is a really, really good place to do business. But if it's not, you gotta tell us how we can make it better, because we're gonna be your fiercest advocate. Other questions?
Hey, Dan, do you want to tease just a little bit the stuff that Mark's working on that's gonna come out in a few weeks?
Yeah, so there's been a study conducted by Retail Strategies Incorporated. Dr. Mark Immerman, is he still a faculty member? Retired faculty? Mark has put together a report that any of you can have. It's really fascinating. So I'll use the simplest example for me to explain, not that you can't comprehend it. But 30 years ago, Ames and its peer cities around the Midwest were all about the same in terms of retail spending in the marketplace and a wide variety of metrics. And he's looked at that, and it shows that over the last 20 years, there's been a gap that's occurred between Ames and other communities. And it ties in large part to retail offerings. And I'll give you an example. And it's not specifically in this report, but it speaks to the report. If Costco, and that isn't the be all end all, I get it, but if Costco had built in Ames because they had a site on 13th Street, and that didn't come together because the sewer line wasn't out there. But in any case, well, we got the sewer, we got the water, we got the whole thing. And so Costco goes to Ankeny. I don't know what the numbers are today, but retail sales tax are a big deal to communities, to cities, because it goes back into their bank account. So, as the legislature continues to talk about property tax reform, and cities are wringing their hands and counties about, are we going to lose our budgets? They need to diversify their revenue. We've all had times where our budgets are in dire straits. What do? You diversify your revenue. And so that's where I think the strongest argument for more retail downtown is to go forward and try and find alternative sources of revenue, in part for the city, while at the same time we're also creating new amenities that are great for all of us that live here and people that are hoping to move here. And so a lot of that report is really focused on how do we become more aggressive so that we have these catalytic projects that really do support community development, and the things that we all want and hope for our community. Oh, and at the same time, it also puts more money in the city's bank account so they can continue to do the things we need them to do to support community and economic development. Chuck, anything else on that? And that's the gist of it, right? Fair?
More coming though in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. And so we have to continue to expand the knowledge base of what these things mean, because Costco being on 13th Street would have just been one more reason maybe that somebody moved here. That sounds crazy, but when I was in Mason City, some folks, a plant manager was coming to town, and he said, yeah, my wife saw that you had a Best Buy. My kid loves Best Buy. That was a long time ago, right? But in part, he said, I'm not kidding. We're living here. We took this job because the other market where I was looking at a job didn't have Best Buy, didn't have some other things that were there. You never know what tips the scale for people. And I'm not saying that Costco is the be-all, end-all, but I know a lot of people that are members here in this market, in our 4-county area, that go that way for whatever they're buying. And so we have to continue to push, and frankly, we need to continue to encourage the city council to be courageous and do these things. And if all of you showed up one night at a Tuesday night city council meeting, they couldn't help but notice. Right? And that's what we're gonna have to do going forward, whether it's the link, whether it's this TIF for housing, these housing developments we talked about. We've got to continue to reinforce with them that these things are important to you as business people, but also you as citizens in our community, right? And so at the end of the day, who do they hear from? They hear from the same 8 or 10, 12 people that, pardon me, bitch about everything. Right? And so what happens, they go, well, we didn't hear from Dan or anybody, so I guess I'm gonna vote no. We're not gonna do that. And at the same time, Chuck and I often joke that they always hear from us, but they need to hear from other people that they go, well, I wonder who that is tonight. I wonder why they're here. Oh, they're here to talk about Costco going on 13th Street, whatever it might be. And it really matters. And I know we're all busy. We've all got plenty of things to do at night, and especially if you've got kids. I had kids, they're gone now, but those nights are busy. But try to make it a priority to pay attention and be present at those things, because it does matter. The optics of that really does matter. Dylan goes to most of the city council meetings because we want them to know the Alliance is paying attention to what they're doing. But at the same time, we're always there, so maybe that's less effective. You still need to go next week. But in all seriousness, the more people that are paying attention, and frankly, I'm not here to tell you that the city council is a bad group of people. They're really great people. But when city council elections roll around again, give it some thought, because we talked to a number of people last time, and are you kidding me? I'd never run for city council. Well, this is the second election the city of Ames had where everybody ran unopposed. Think about that for a minute. A community of 70,000 people, and we couldn't find anybody that said, yeah, I'll throw my hat in the ring to run against somebody, and there was nobody. Now, we didn't talk to everybody, right? We talked to the likely suspects and the people we kind of knew might at least have the conversation. But the point is that most people say, "Oh, Dan, there's 5-hour meetings and it's a marathon every other Tuesday night." I said, it is right now, but it doesn't have to be. It wasn't that long ago. The school board meetings in this community, the Ames community, were marathons, and then a whole bunch of business people got elected, and what happened? Those meetings were an hour long, and they got even more done. And so I firmly believe that if we, over time, have people in the city council that say, hey, Iowa State plays at 8 o'clock tonight, we're starting at 6, I'm out of here by 7:15 so I can go and watch the game. You know, it's things like that, though, that if we get the right people at the table, they can still plow through all the things they need to plow through, but it doesn't have to be a marathon where we talk all night. And Dylan gets punished by that a lot, that Chuck does too. I've been to a number more of the years too, and it's like, oh my gosh, please stop talking so we can go home. You know? And if you think, you probably don't know this, but if you look at Cedar Falls, West Des Moines, Waukee, you know, kind of similar communities, their meetings are an hour and 20 minutes or less. We work in Boone. The Boone City Council meetings are about 25 minutes, no matter what's going on. And we love that. We love that. So give that some thought, and if you want to have a longer conversation about that, I know Dylan or I'd be happy to talk to you about that. Dylan.
You mentioned just briefly in your comments about city changes to the city and diversifying their tax base. There's been a lot of discussion about property taxes and the efficiency of local governments and using those dollars, and everybody wants lower taxes. Can you talk a little bit about the impact of property taxes on the city as far as their ability to do things that increase people wanting to live in a community?
You know, with some of the proposals that have been talked about at the Capitol already this year, it really would hamstring a lot of our communities. It would really hamstring them from doing a lot of things. Now you might hear, oh, we're not going to mow the parks, and you know, we'll cut firefighters and police officers, and some of those things are probably true at some level. But when push comes to shove, you know, what happens is if I ask any of you, hey, do you like your property taxes? Well, nobody's gonna say, Dan, they're amazing, I love them. It's how you ask the question, you know? But I can tell you that as we work with industries looking at anywhere in our region, the property tax question doesn't come up. They understand they're gonna have to pay something for services, right? Now, what they don't ask is how quickly do the assessments bump every year, right? But because they don't think about asking that question. But by and large, our cities are across our region are very well operated, and they still need to eat at some level to provide the services that we expect. And what's going to happen, I believe, is that if they really get draconian on this and really restrict these things, one day you're gonna drive by your favorite park and see the grass is 8 inches long. You go, what the hell's going on? Well, they're gonna mow less. They're gonna do things less to try and meet their obligations. And I'm not crying poor Mary here about how bad it's gonna be for the city of Ames or Boone or whatever it might be, but they gotta strike a balance here. And that's where it's disheartening that they're not leaning in on cities and counties to say, okay, if we turn this dial, how would that make you feel? If we turn this dial, how would it make you feel? It's like the economic development policy that came out in the governor's bill. I know her really well, but she didn't ask me about it. But I would have told her, hey, don't do that to TIF. That's really restrictive, and it'll be a useless tool. And so that's where we need people in government at all levels that ask you as business people, what does this do to you, right? Because if you knock on the door of a nice, sweet little lady in a small town and say, ma'am, how do you like your property taxes? Oh my gosh, she'll talk to you for an hour about what a struggle it was to pay those. And she's probably right, but because they go up every year. But that's where this is a tough subject at the state level, and they really need to blow it up and start over. But nobody's got the courage to do that because it's hard. And so, but I encourage you to watch, and I know Stacy said she was on a call this morning, legislative call. I know your state organization is watching this. There's a new developers organization that is also run by the same lobbyists that we engage, and is also runs the Iowa Chamber Alliance. We're all watching this closely because it matters to everybody in this room. It really does. All right, who's got a softball? That was tough, Dylan. Come on. Hey, if there's nothing else, thanks again for having me today. Stacy, thanks for inviting me. Thanks for what you folks are doing across our community and our region. It's so important. And if we can be helpful to you, you know where to find us. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Dan, again. Some upcoming events we have is AI in Construction on January 21st, Home Staging by Sell It Well on the 22nd, CPR and Trauma Response on February 3rd, wine tasting at Della Vidi, February 23rd, and our spring golf outing is May 15th. We'll be adding more events in the upcoming weeks and months. Again, thank you to Dan and First National Bank for hosting and sponsoring the event. Have a good one, guys.
Yeah.